What is your process of composing tracks when it's movies?
I'm very story driven. I think for me, I have to see the song happen in that story. I have to reach that point. So one of the things which I do is I always ask the director for a copy of the script. It's not for me, like I like reading in general, but I really love reading and getting to the point of the song in an organic way. Like read maybe 4 or 5 scenes prior, read and see how we get to the song, so that I can imagine the score, what would be there, and then the song should feel like an extension of that. This is how I like to try. I mean, doesn't work every time, doesn't happen every time, because sometimes you might make the song and then its position might change. All these things can happen. But to at least to what do I say, to fuel my creativity, to get my creative juices flowing, I use that as a technique.
Hey guys, welcome to Art and Culture Tribe. I hope you guys are doing well. Today we have with us an amazing artist who is a music composer. He's worked in the Kannada, Malayalam, and Telugu film industry. You want to know who that is? Check him out. So let's welcome Midhun Mukundan. Hello, Midhun. What's
Hi.
up?
Good, all good. How are you?
I'm very good, man. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. Very
And
happy to be here.
I'm so happy. I'm so glad. And I think we were talking about, you being in the show, I think 3-4 months back.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm glad this happened.
Yeah.
And you got some time to, chit chat with us.
It's I was very happy actually. The last time we met, when you mentioned this thing, I was, it's something which I do it very often, usually as part of a film's promotional events, but to actually sit down with a friend and speak, we go, way back. I think like 15 years, 12 years that we have
Yeah.
known each other. So
Yes.
that was something that I was really looking forward to.
Correct. I think 2008-9 is when we.
I think it was 2010. Like
Okay.
just as I finished my final year,
Okay.
this thing, that is when we got introduced, and I
Yes.
joined the band in Bangalore, and from
Yes.
then on, here we are.
The amazing band Bandit.
Band-Aid, exactly. Shout out to any Band-Aid fans who are out there remaining.
Awesome. So, Midhun, let's just get into it. And, how did music happen with you? Where did it start?
For me, I think, like a lot of people, I think it started because I had some very, observant parents and very dedicated parents who were really looking out to find out whether their kid was actually talented in anything. So I think somewhere along the line, my father found me playing on some toy keyboard. I guess some Malayalam song of that time. So that's when he got an idea that, probably this fellow has some talent. And I think there was definitely that inclination in both my parents towards music, towards the arts. Though they have not been trained, they are real lovers of arts. So in that way, I think that was my big fortune, that I had parents who were really able to catch on the fact that, there was something here. And of course, it was really difficult to find a good guru. Where I grew up in Doha, Qatar, it's an expatriate community. There are people who go there for work. They don't have the time or the bandwidth for things like engaging in the arts. And once in a while there are some cultural shows or something. So I believe my father actually found my guru playing the keyboard at some expatriate community program, and then he asked him, can you teach him? I believe there was actually another person who taught me for a few months before my guru, but he was not able to sustain it again. Their lifestyle, his working hours and all were not matching. So luckily for us, this person, my guru, Dr. Mr. Mridula Chandran, he was the one who actually taught me pretty much everything I know. For around 17, 18 years, he trained me. So he was a former, I believe he had a stint in All India Radio also. I don't remember the details. But he became my guru when I was 3.5 years old.
Man,
So
3.5
from
years
there
old,
till
yeah.
around 19, when I left Doha, that many years he's taught me.
Okay.
In fact, he's the only formal teacher that I've had. Other than that, it's all like, the whole, what was it? Eklavya, right? It's that kind of thing, observing and learning kind of
Okay.
situation. So, yeah, but that's how it started. But again, I think the phase of my childhood was a pretty good time in the Middle East also, because communities were opening up. Earlier it was when my dad went there for work. I think your dad also had worked
He was in
in the
Muscat.
Middle East,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes, yes.
So he would have also felt the same thing. It was a very close kind of thing. You only had your immediate circle to, interact with. But as we were in school, all the communities started coming together. There was an Indian Cultural Center, which was right under the Embassy of India. They used to, organize these huge shows and programs, and kids always got platforms to perform. That was, I think, the most important thing for me, myself and my sister. So we had a lot of avenues to explore, what we wanted to do, how to perform, get over stage fright,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So I think, yeah, a lot of good fortune that I was in those circumstances. And I think somewhere probably around 7th or 8th standard is when the whole music director bug bit me. Again, because of A.R. Rahman. I think
Yes.
you have spent enough time. We both have spent enough time with each other that we
Yeah.
know how much he features in our journey. But yeah, I think films like Swades, Dil Se, Lagan. Oh my
Yeah.
God, Lagan. I recently listened to it. Like, it just brought back so many memories of how those songs used to affect me, when I heard them for the first time. So I think that bug of wanting to be a music director was pretty much, it bit me at that time. But then again, I think the biggest problem is that the lack of information. But how do you go about it?
Yeah.
You want to be a singer? Okay, you pick up a mic and you sing, or you go to reality shows. There were at least a couple of avenues that normal people like us knew. With a music director, we had no idea. There was nobody to guide me in that way. So I guess I fell into the usual middle class trappings of having to complete a degree and all that stuff. That's how I ended up in Mangalore to do medicine. And yeah, I think from the Mangalore story onwards, we will take it in
Yes.
another chapter, because you're also involved in it very deeply.
Yes.
So, yeah.
What kind of music did you learn? Was it Western or was it Indian?
No, I learned Indian classical.
Okay.
So mainly, I think majorly it was Carnatic, but a little bit of Hindustani also, especially when it came to keyboards, because my guru was trained in both vocals and keyboards, and he taught me the same. So when it came to the keyboards, he would actually dabble a little more in Hindustani ragas. The movements were in similar ways. But I think with vocals, I had predominantly learned Carnatic.
Okay. And keyboard was your choice of instrument, or it was an accident, or it just happened?
No, actually, keyboard was how I started, because I told you, right? Because I played that silly tune on the toy keyboard. My father believed that this guy is, the next Jordan Rudess or something. So he contacted my guru to actually teach me keyboard. He was also playing keyboard in that show. So in fact, he came to our house. I remember my parents telling me this, because I was just 3 at the time. He apparently came and he said, I'll just spend some time with the kid, see if he actually has the talent that you're talking about, because he had also never taught anybody before.
Correct.
So he was like, it's something which I'll also need to develop. So I still remember, I have a very faint memory of this man coming into the room and asking me what I was playing on the keyboard and asking me to show that. So then I believe he told my parents that, yes, we can start something slowly. But it was around 3 or 4 years after I started my keyboard training that my parents noticed that my guru could actually sing well. Because he would hum the tunes as he was teaching me, and in swaras and everything. So they asked him, like, can you teach him vocals also? Like, okay, chalo. So then both became. So he would come over to my place. We would have like 30-35 minutes of keyboard classes and 30-35 minutes of vocal classes. That's how my musical training was throughout. No
Okay.
school or anything. It was very much, very guru coming home and teaching us
Yes.
for 1.5 hours and then leaving. That
And I
was the
think
system.
that's a nice place where it's
Yes.
individual attention.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. It made a huge difference for us.
Yes.
My sister and I. The way and I believe I was his first ever student. So he kind of created the system of teaching itself with us.
Wow.
So he saw what worked with us, and that was very good. We actually got to be molded by this amazing teacher. So again, certain fortunes you really cannot plan.
Absolutely.
It just happens.
Okay. So we'll dive into, your first movie, Kahi. How did that happen? And what are the things that you had to do to get into the movie industry?
Actually, I didn't do anything to get into the movie industry. The thing is, I'm a perfect example of extreme confidence mixed with extreme ignorance. Because I didn't, me. You were with me in Mangalore. I was an NRI kid who came from Mangalore. I barely knew how to survive in Mangalore itself. And Bangalore is like a big bad wolf compared to Mangalore. Mangalore is such a chilled place and everything. And because of that is something which I need to mention here. The reason I actually reached Bangalore is because of Dinkar, because of his kindness, because it is your opportunity to actually work in a studio here that you had. You asked me to collaborate on that piece with you, and then
Yeah.
you forced me to travel to Bangalore with you. I don't know if you remember this, but
Yeah, I do
I think
remember.
everybody in my professional career who has ever asked me about my origin story, this name Dinkar has come up. You can watch it; it's there everywhere. There are two names that always come up. One is Dinkar, and the other one is Hriday Goswami. These two names are always there in my story. But basically, that's what happened. So we were in Mangalore. We were working on Band-Aid. You asked me to come to Bangalore for that for a short. I think we were here for a week,
Yes.
right? Yeah. And I think by the end of that week, my parents had basically stopped talking to me. The whole situation at home was completely gone. And I still had a bit of my house agency, my internship to finish.
Yes.
So I went back, finished that. And by that time, I think it was, again, it's a mix of many things. I was extremely confident in the fact that this is what I wanted to do. And I did have the talent. I had that confidence. At the same time, there was that extreme desperation also, because it was almost like, now I have to go down this path because I have chosen it. Family is also against it, and we have established that I'm the black sheep of the family. So now I have to go down that path and prove them
Yes.
wrong or something of that sort. Again, in your youth, you have all these kind of angst and everything, which worked in my favor because it gave me that impetus to actually finally make the move to Bangalore. So I moved here and I was working in a studio for a little while. At that point, I met Abba Hanjara.
Yes.
I'm sure you know
Yes.
Abba Hanjara. In fact, I think you were there when
Yes. Yes. I remember
I
that.
was introduced to her. Yeah. So the project with Abha and being part of her, it started with producing one of her songs, then being a part of her live shows. That actually, I think, was a huge turning point for me, because it started exposing me to fellow musicians who are operating at a level which was much higher than mine. I actually had to start working to catch up with them, and expand my musical palette, expand my skills, develop them so that I can be at the same level as these guys. One of them has been on your show,
Yes.
Yadunandan. Like, Yadu is younger than me, but when I met him, he's like this. He was 17 or 18 at the time, prodigious drummer. He had just come off. I'd seen him on Rock On,
Correct.
the show. The guy was insane, and everybody in that band, whether they were older than me, younger than me, it had nothing to do with my I was without a doubt the most inexperienced person, because I was this medical student who had finished all this, and finally now it's like a hobbyist decided to become pro. That's how it was. So but that really pushed me. Like, I learned a lot from these people. I learned a lot, like, from each musician, whether it is a drummer, whether it's a percussionist, whether it was a guitarist. Recently I lost one of my good friends, Sanjay Chandrakant, who
Yes.
was one of the guitarists.
Yes.
I think the amount I've learned from Sanjay about chord progressions, and how to treat the same melody with color a chord a little
Oh
bit and
yes.
change its this thing. So much is like a
Correct.
wealth of information. It was all coming at me so fast. So I did improve a lot. I did learn a lot. But at the same time, all these people, all these musicians knew that my end goal was films. Like, a film music composer is what I wanted. As much fun as live shows are, films and studio, and being inside the that dim light of a studio trying to create something, that is what I enjoy the most. So I think somewhere, probably maybe around 2 or 3 years after I started working with ABBA, I was introduced to this young director called Arvind Shastri. Arvind Shastri, actually, because he was looking for a music composer and he had put the word out to his friends. Again, a cinematographer spoke to a musician in this band, and blah, 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 blah. But finally, I ended up having my first narration of my career with him in a jam room like this, in a very
Okay.
small, confined space. We were sitting. And I still remember he took around 4 hours to narrate the script of a film which was barely 2 hours. Okay. Because he was so detailed and he was painting a picture. And that was one of the days when I realized that this is not a job for everybody. listening to a story, understanding it, then deciding to make the score for it, or trying to imagine how your score would be in that film. Because as you read or as you hear the story, you're immediately visualizing it. I realized that day, because as I was getting that narration, I was already seeing the film in front of my eyes. I was already imagining how it would be. But two other guys who were with me, they couldn't, I mean, they were not part of the conversation, but they were just sitting and listening. It's a story, right? But I think around 1 hour later, they made an excuse and they got up and went, because it was too, it was too long for them, because he was describing every frame and things like that. But I was mesmerized. I was in love from that day. And I think as soon as he finished narrating, I was like, I don't care what our budget is. I don't know anything about it. I don't know what the numbers are, but we are doing it. Let's figure it out. And he was also completely, green in this. He didn't have an idea about how the a reel should be cut or anything of that sort. We were still learning. It's just that he had a dream. He had the confidence to actually pull it off, and he found me, another crazy fellow who wanted to do this. So that's how it started.
Okay.
And yeah, from there it's been a great journey so far. But the beginning was, so that's what I said. It's like I cannot really claim that I went looking for producers or directors and started pitching my music. That really never happened. It was a very very serendipitous meeting with Arvind. But then I believe from there on, I genuinely believe that my calling card has been the work that I do.
Correct.
So from Kahi, the next film that came, or the film that came after that, my first success, Ondumute Kathe, even that film came because of Kahi. So all that, so that's what I believe. I believe that every piece of work that I put out there is my calling card, and somebody will come looking for me if they want me. So.
Correct.
That's how it's been going so far. Hopefully it'll...
And we're so glad that I think you've done more than 25 movies now.
Yeah, pretty much 25.
Kannada and Malayalam.
Malayalam and Telugu.
And
together,
okay, cool.
So
and I think you are working on Telugu.
I'm
two
working
movies.
on a couple of Telugu films right now, and Malayalam is also in the works.
Okay.
So yeah, again, I'm quite choosy about what I work on, because I wouldn't say that I think I'm still in that process of trying to expand my musical palette. Like I really I can never claim that I can do the mass commercial music, let's say, as well as probably Anirudh Ravichandar. He does it. He's gotten it down to a science. I really cannot make any such claims. So when it comes to the films that I do also, I really have to choose scripts which I know will play to my strengths.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
that's how I do it. So if I hear probably like 10 or 15 scripts, I probably choose 3 or 4 out of them. So that's the only reason I am choosy is because of that. It has nothing to do with the money or the star who is involved, nothing of that sort. It is purely because that I should see myself making music for that film.
Correct.
When I hear that story.
Okay.
So if that happens, then I choose it.
Okay. Since you talked about the commercial music that's happening around, do you think that kind of puts a little bit of pressure on not you in general, but the general composers? Is there a pressure when it comes to commercial music?
No, I don't think that the success of another composer puts pressure on you as a composer. Like Anirudh, for example, I just mentioned him because he's probably the biggest name with the largest number of streams and the biggest films and all that. But his success is something which I enjoy. Like I saw Jailer 2's announcement the other day. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved how they made it. I loved the score. Everything was fun. The only problem when the pressure comes in is when filmmakers expect everybody to make music like Anirudh. That is where the pressure comes. So I don't think the pressure comes from Anirudh himself. He's just doing what he does, right? I'm sure if you speak to him, he will definitely have some other music composer that he looks up to and he wishes that he can make that kind of music. He does this very well, but there is something else which he would like to explore. So if when people ask me also, I always talk about, I would really like to make music like how Anirudh does, that really massy, stylish piece of music. Or how Lin-Manuel Miranda makes, wonderful scores for Broadway and stuff like Hamilton. And recently I watched Mufasa. Oh my goodness. It's just insane. Like, that's what, there is an aspirational quality to hearing those scores because you really I want to grow as a musician to be able to make something that good someday. right?
Correct.
And I'm very well aware of the fact that I'm not there yet. I'm still working towards it. But there are some things which I do probably well. Certain scripts and certain scores of mine have been extremely well received, and people have really enjoyed them. And somebody would tell that that inspires them, that work inspires them. So I might be somebody's inspiration, I might be aspiring to be like somebody else. This is all part of our journey as an
Yeah.
artist. The only issue, whereas the pressure that you mentioned, is when some people start deciding that this is the thing that works. The minute you have decided that, I think you're on the wrong track. That's what I always, and this is a constant struggle, especially when you're in a commercial medium like cinema. I mean, we have to be realistic about it. It needs the commerce for it to work. So I understand that, but the I think just day before yesterday, I was having a conversation with one of my directors, and I was telling him that if, let's say, our film, the film that we are working on, which we believe is not very commercial, if it hits 100 crores or 200 crores in revenue, that becomes a commercial formula,
Exactly.
right? That is the
Exactly.
new
Yes.
commercial formula. So in such a way, I mean, I try not to put that pressure on myself just because I listen to another musician's work, but the pressure is sometimes put on me from filmmakers or from producers or I mean, again, they don't mean any harm, and I'm completely aware of that. It's
Yes.
all with the best intentions, but sometimes it stifles art, it stifles the artist. So that can be a little bit of pressure, but I think with experience I've started
Okay.
dealing with it a lot better now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your process of composing tracks when it's movies?
Uh, I think again, I'm very story driven. I think for me, I have to see the song happen in that story. I have to, reach that point. So one of the things which I do is I always ask the director for a copy of the script. It's not for me, like I like reading in general, but I really love reading and getting to the point of the song in an organic way. Like, read maybe 4 or 5 scenes prior, read and see how we get to the song, so that I can imagine the score, what would be there, and then the song should feel like an extension of that. This is how I like to try. I mean, doesn't work every time, doesn't happen every time, because sometimes you might make the song and then its position might change. All these things can happen, but
Okay.
to at least to what do I say, to fuel my creativity, to get my creative juices flowing, I use that as a technique. And when it comes to the composing part, also, I think I would say I'm very melody driven that way.
Yeah.
I usually don't start a song with a rhythm section or anything, or with a beat or anything. I usually have a melody before I go for a rhythm. But sometimes it depends on the situation. If it's a upbeat song, or if it's something like a quirky number, maybe you want some quirky
Sounds that,
tones, yeah,
yeah.
sounds in the background, and that might kick something off.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why I mentioned giving that caveat that it is very story driven, because it actually is. It's what the story is, what the situation is. I try to just imagine it as well as I can in my head, so that I can get into the mood of the song and the score and things. And I try not to look at songs and scores separately, because I make it a point to do both of them. I don't do songs and somebody else do the score. That has, I mean, very rarely it has happened, but as a rule of thumb, I try not to have that in my films. I want to do the entire score of the
Correct.
film. So even when I'm doing a tune also, one of the things which I think about is how will this tune incorporate into the theme later? How will the melody? That was one of the things which I used to love about A.R. Rahman's work.
Yeah.
How he used to integrate the melody of a song into a scene in some other situation and in a completely different arrangement. Khwaja Mere Khwaja, Lagans. So there's so many other, so that was one thing which I think he has very heavily influenced my work.
Yeah.
So when I'm working on the film, or working on the song also, I think there are aspects of it where like sometimes I might make an interlude and I feel like, this has a very catchy feel to it, or like catchy as in there's a very emotional quotient to it. So this might be a
Part of
good
the
fit in the
BGM. Yeah.
in that scene,
Okay.
and I probably run it by the director also as an
Of
idea.
course.
So this is a process. There is no science to it. It is basically go by feel. But the first stop for me is always the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you someone who works mostly in the night?
I used to. I used to. And that is two reasons for it. One, because my idol A.R. Rahman is famous for working at night. So that's one thing. And then another reason, no pointing fingers, but it was the power situation in Bangalore. Because it was, I didn't have the money to, afford an UPS or anything of that sort. So it was just daytime, there will be lots of power cuts and I don't have backup. So it'll just keep breaking your flow.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, night was the time to work. So that's how it started. But in recent years, thinking of advancing age and health concerns and things like that, I've been trying to be a little more disciplined with my time. So I work as much as possible during the day. Only on those particular nights when, it's like, oh my God, I'm in that zone and nothing can. Because, I think on a usual day, I'd probably wind down. I'll start, my body will get tired by 12:30, 1 or something of that sort. But there are those days when a tune has come and it's like, like you've had 10 Red Bulls. You can't stop working. Only those days now it goes up to 5, 6 in the morning.
Okay.
Otherwise, I've tried to stop the night working thing now.
Okay, great, man. Talking about Undu Mutte
Yeah.
and I think, how did you meet Suhan and Raj? And
Suhan and Raj were actually because of, the meeting was because of the Kahi film.
Okay.
Kahi's trailer came out, I think, almost a year before our film came out. Because again, new kids, we had no idea what we were doing. We just wanted to gauge the audience's reaction, just get a small glimpse of how people would react to it. So I don't think you can call it a trailer. It was more of a teaser. So we released this, but somehow, I think in that independent film community, it started getting some traction. Pawan Kumar, I think you might know him, director of Lucia,
Yes.
U-Turn. So he saw the teaser. He really liked it. He called Arvind and he actually had a discussion with him about the teaser and the music and everything. And so similarly, because of those little bit of boost that we were getting at that time, it ended up being watched by Suhan. And Suhan and Arvind had a connection because they were both students of Ramoji Rao Film School. So that's how that connection came. So he called, and I believe when he showed it to Raj was also quite impressed. Although, again, credit to them because the trailer of Kahi is completely different from Unduvotte Kathe. Unduvotte Kathe is this very bright, light, very emotional kind of a film. Kahi was dark. It was a very, very, like a proper no, I wouldn't say, no, it's not underworld, but it's like that, the belly of the city kind of a feel. It has that, it's a very dark film in that way. Lots of dark themes, mature themes were discussed in it. There was a proper character who was progressing from being a psychopath into a serial killer. So it was very dark themes. But listening to that score, the fact that these guys thought that, okay, this music director can actually lend some value to a project is, I mean, kudos to them for that.
Yeah.
But because of that teaser, they got in touch with me and we met here in Bangalore and they narrated the script. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, man. It was great piece of music and it went so well with the movie. And the movie also was so, like you said, was so light and was so different for the time, with all the commercial stuff that was happening. That was like, you just sit, relax, watch, enjoy.
Yes. And it made you think.
Yeah.
It made you think. That was the best
Definitely.
part of it.
I
It was,
think,
it was not a film that you forgot very easily. That was the best part about that
Yes.
film. I think it's very difficult to get that balance right. It's almost, it actually feels like there are these sweets which you eat one piece of and then you're, flat. Like you can't move. But then there are certain things which you can eat and they have the right amount of sweetness, right amount of oil or ghee or whatever, and they just don't make you. It's this is the thing, and they linger, they stay. I always liken Unduvotte Kathe to that. It's this light film. There's not much to talk about per se. But at the same time, you will talk about it, you will think about it, it will affect you in I think most of the people who watched that film, one of the most beautiful things was that they felt a little bad about somebody they must have, judged based on their looks.
Yeah.
I think that was the best thing about that film. Because I remember feeling that when I heard the script. And when it came out in the film form, with music and some nice comedy, good laughs, like good actual quality comedy. When all that came up, I think it made people feel that, and that was the success of that film.
Yes.
Again, it's good fortune. You really can't plan being a part of a film like Undamute Kathe or Garuda Gamana. I mean, even a film like Rorschach, which came later in my career, it was Rorschach happened because of Garuda Gamana,
Okay.
my first film in Malayalam, and that's with Mammootty. It's a big star.
Yeah.
So there, I think there is a little bit of calculation involved because I'm thinking of, okay, it's my first film in Malayalam, but it's not at all a commercial film. But again, it is megastar
Mammootty,
Mammootty.
yeah, of
So
course.
you know what? And then I'm like, you know what? There's not much to think about. We are doing it because this is the kind of script that I wanted to do. But there was definitely a little bit of career calculation at that point. But
Yeah.
when it came to Undamute Kathe, there is no such thing. You know, we are just hungry to make a film. These guys are nobody. I am nobody. And, you know, we just want to make a good film. And I was completely, I still remember laughing like a madman listening to the narration. Like literally, right from the first scene where there is a marriage proposal scene, from that scene onwards, I was laughing. You know?
Was Suhan doing the narration for this?
No, Raj did the
Raj
narration.
did the
In
narration.
fact, Raj did the narration and Raj. So at the end of the narration, I asked him, so who's going to play this Janardhan character? And he said, we are looking for somebody who's bald. I was like, I think you know, don't you? But because he acted it so well, you know, and I know why you asked the question because even Suhan would have acted it fantastically. He's a brilliant actor himself. But it was such a fun narration. And as we finished the narration, I still remember having this tune in my pocket and I took it out and I said, you know, that first economics teacher, that love story that you have.
Chanda was that
Chanda,
song? Yeah.
I was like, you know, and I had just composed it the previous day, not knowing it was, you know, what for. But these are things you cannot plan. Like, how do you explain why that happened?
Okay.
It just happened, you know. I was composing for some other situation and I had composed, I think, 15, 20, 25 tunes. None of them were happening, but this was one of the tunes out of that which I felt was good.
Good, yeah.
Not for that situation. And the very next day, these guys come and meet me and we have this song. I think probably one of the biggest hits of the earlier part of my career was Chandavla Kirlari.
Yeah,
Even today, people really mention that song whenever I meet Kannadiga audiences. So.
Yes.
So that's what I said. So these are things which you cannot plan for, but you just have to be prepared. You just have to keep working and developing those tunes because if I had not worked on those 25 tunes and not come up with that Chanda Avulakirulaje, probably, you know, Undumote Kathe and that song happening in it would not have happened.
Amazing.
So you just keep working, and yeah, it is difficult. Nobody's going to say that it's easy and being positive, especially when nothing seems to be working. So yeah, you just have to be prepared. And it doesn't change even after one hit film or a second hit film. There are days where I feel like, you know what, I'm just making a complete mistake with my life. There are days, you know, where nothing seems to be working out. Things are not at all going the way. The tunes which I send, even I'm not happy or they are not happy. We have, you know, lots of creative differences, financial issues. All these things come up. But then there will come a film, there will come a story, there will come a tune which makes you believe that, you know, the whole thing is, there is this funny memes which come on Instagram, the mood of a music producer. I'm shit, I'm amazing. I'm shit, I'm amazing. So it's a very common thing. I can completely relate to that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Coming back to the song Chanda, I think it is very playful. It is romantic, and it has this cute approach, and you know it's so playful in the whole,
True.
you know, the whole composition, and that is something that I really enjoyed. Also, even you know the way it was picturized. Also,
Yeah, it was very nicely picturized. It was that. I think that was the thing about that song because that whole scenario, as they narrated it to me. So you can imagine how the narration would be. Like as a film, you have watched it, but imagine the narration. So they're like, you know, so Janardhan and Srinivas are talking, and Srinivas is basically telling him, go and tell her that you like her. I was like, how do I tell her? And then this is basically Srinivas telling him the different techniques of how to talk to a girl, and at the same time, the small interactions that he has with her, and that the funny scene where he sees one of the students flirting with her while he is drinking water, and then he pours all the water on him. So you can. I told you, this is how it is being narrated to me. You know, of course, in a much better way by a good storyteller. But so as I'm imagining it, the whole thing has this lightness to it. You know, there is no heavy emotion, none priyatama, none of that sort. It's very light. So I think that it's very important that the person who conveys the story to you conveys it in as vivid a way as possible. And each one has their own way, by the way. Different people have different ways. Some people paint a scene beautifully with their words. Some people give you very technical specifications. I would like it at this tempo or something. So they might have their own language, right?
Correct.
But the more vivid the picture that filmmaker paints, the more it helps, I think, a composer.
Okay.
And listening to that and grabbing onto that, because that is my life jacket. That is actually what will start the spark for me. So I try to absorb as much as possible from, and for me the communication with the filmmaker is very important.
Yeah.
Having a very, very, like, I, I think the best collaborations that I've had, I've spoken to the directors maybe 5-6 times a day during the entire time that the project is happening. And those are the ones where I've gotten the best output, because I'm basically trying to tap into their mind. I'll just yesterday I had this song where I had to prepare a tribal song. It's a tribal song, and it's a tribe that is based in Andhra Pradesh, which is a culture I don't know much about, especially the tribal culture. I have no idea about. I've never heard their music before. So my entire encyclopedia into this tribe is my director. So my director has actually, and he himself has been researching on them, and he's been learning about their customs and everything. But everything that I make, I'm running it by him, and I'm waiting to hear his honest feedback about it, because that is how I can match what he has in mind. So I the other day I sent him something which had a very nice tribal beat, which I really liked, and even he liked the beat. But then I composed a melody on top of it, like a song. And immediately his thing was that, it's probably going a little bit into the filmy thing, and I really wanted to be very rooted into the.
Correct.
So he has to have that confidence that, he can communicate that with me.
Yeah.
And, I always tell that. It's like, forget about any other formality. Here, we have to be brutally honest with each other. So if he gives me an idea, and if I feel that it does not work, I tell him that, I say, for such and such reason, I think it's probably not a good idea to try this. But basically that channel has to be extremely honest and very open. It has to be very robust. Like, we have to keep talking very often. I'm not necessarily a person who sits with the director and works with them. I don't probably enjoy that very much. But phone conversations is something which is very important for me to understand what they're looking for, get into that mind space, and then try and match it with my work, with the music that I make. So I think with Chanda Vlakiru Lajje also, that the real success was that they communicated that idea to me very well. Of course, the tune was there, but how should we arrange it was, how to produce the music was based on what they told me from that story. So.
Okay. When you do the arrangements, do you think as a sound engineer as well, like, okay, this can be panned a certain way, this is going to be, this probably this, has a better effect and stuff like that?
I think that's there right from the beginning.
Okay.
Right from the beginning. Because I do not compose and then produce. I compose and produce
on the same,
at the same time.
Okay.
So as I'm doing it, I'm immediately thinking about what should the kick be like, what should the bass tone be like, should there be keys, should there be guitars. There all those thoughts are going. And even if I have keys and guitar, where is it going to be? Is the keys in the center, guitar to the right, or are they both panned? So all these things are immediately going on in my head. So I don't think I have a process of separating the two, because that's how I've learned. That's how I've learned composing. That's how I've composed throughout my career. So I think that aspect is definitely there. But yes, I think while I make the music, definitely the choices are made in such a way that it should be the final thing. I'm not making a rough one first and then planning to change it. So when I'm looking for a kick, I'm trying to find the kick which I believe will work for the song.
Okay, got it.
So that's how my choices are usually made. And yes, I think the quality of the choices have definitely improved over the years. I still remember the first, not the first movie, after Kahi, there was another release of mine called Srinivasa Kalyana. So I had a song in that called Gappu Gappali was also a song in that. That was a very simple arrangement. There was another song called Full Busy. It was sung by Vijay Prakash.
Vijay Prakash, yeah.
So that song, I still remember, because I was looking for this particular kind of kick, which was there in my head. I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know how to, tweak the tone and get it by myself. So I added one kick, then I added another kick, and then I decided that the combination of the two is giving me that tone, kind of.
Okay.
And then I realized that, okay, there was another, probably a frequency that I was like one had this tuck to it, another one had the rounded boom to it. I probably needed another sound. I actually ended up using 7 kicks in that song when I finally finished. Okay, and they were terrible choices.
Okay.
No doubt about it. Now I know that they are terrible choices because back then the sound was good. I knew what it was like. This is what I wanted it to sound like. I took it to Hriday for mixing. And see, again, this is what I said. Like, good people have to come into your lives. That is, I think, attracting good people into your lives is a huge asset, which probably we don't give too much emphasis on. I met Hriday with you.
Yes.
The same day we both
We
met him
both
for the
met him,
first
yeah.
time. We had heard about him, but we saw him. Both of us sat in the same room and saw him enter the room at the same time. And I think 2 years later, I messaged him on Facebook and said, Hriday sir, can you please mix my songs for me? He was like, sure, why don't you meet me and let me know? I met him at Barton Center in MG Road and played him the songs. And he said, hey, this is nice, man, we'll work on it. So as part of that process is when this song and its waves, I took it to Hriday and put it on, and he's like, kick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's like, what the hell is this? He's like, what are you going for? I was like, Hriday, I want this kind of a tone. Okay, tuck, 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 tuck. Muted 6 of them, tweaked one kick had the whole thing.
And Hriday being Hriday, I can imagine that, how
Yeah.
he will communicate.
Correct. No, but the thing is that, and see, that's the point. There are people or there are situations where I've seen Hriday get angry and get like really, really brutal with the way he communicates. But when when he sees that somebody is actually trying to learn, like lack of knowledge is not somebody's mistake.
Yeah.
A persistent lack of knowledge is a mistake because you're not willing to learn. For me, my lack of knowledge at that time was because of my circumstance, because I had never been in a studio. This thing, I had never had any audio engineering background, except for the fact that I used to program and arrange my own music in my Korg keyboard, which again, I was doing it in my way. There was nobody to tell me that this is a good way or this is a bad way. And nothing had been ever mixed and mastered and released or anything of that sort. So it was all very new to me. So I still remember how patiently he sat and explained to me why this should not be done. Today, if I go to him with 7 kicks, he'll tell me to get out. And he should. I believe he should tell me to. But today, my mistakes are different. Or probably the guidance that I take from him are different. And even that, he explains very carefully. Like today, he tells me advanced mixing tips that he has. And I still remember very recently I had asked him, I wanted my kick to have a little more thump, the kick and bass to really lock in together. And he asked me to cut at one particular frequency, I believe 300. And he just told, just make a deep cut, make it as narrow as possible. And like magic, what I was looking for happened. So those are the kinds of things he and I communicate now. But at that time, it was much broader. I was basically trying to just learn from what this guy would do with the tracks that I gave him. And then I would understand that why he made those choices.
Correct.
What are these decisions? And yes, in certain cases, I would tell him that I know this is why you made this choice, but this is not the sound I'm looking for.
Okay.
Because I'm the composer after all.
Yes.
And he would work to match that vision. So that's what I said. Working with people like that. Like he can easily tell me, he's like, dude, I've been working for 15 years, I know what I'm talking about. But he never did that. When Arvind Shastri and I took our first reels of Kahi to him, we didn't have, there's this thing of adding a beep at the beginning of every reel, right? We didn't know that.
For sync.
So he had cut the reels, he had given me the visuals, and I also didn't know that, there is a beep usually at the beginning. And I started making music. So how I would sync it is like, I still remember there's an actress in the film, there's a shot where she, just opens her eyes. Okay. It's a close-up shot. So that
was a cue.
Yeah, that was my cue. So I had put like a ring kind of a thing there. So, and this is how I would call the director and tell him, like once I'd send it to him when he's sitting, I'd be like, just sync that exactly to her eye and then the rest of the music will fall. This is how we did it. So when we went to Hriday, Arvind and I are sitting there like two proud idiots. Like, yeah, we have given him the music. He listened, he's like, okay, music is good, but guys, where is the beep? He's like, what beep is he talking about? Because that's how illiterate we were, So, and then he told us why it's better to have a beep, as your departments increase. There's a sound design department, there's a dubbing department, etc., etc. It'll be very difficult to, sync everybody's work up. So, but even that small thing, that man could have easily said, really, guys, you need to learn more before you make a movie. He could have gotten pissed off. He could have dismissed us, but he never did that. He explained why it had to be done.
Yeah.
So I think that is one of the important things that has changed, like, me as a person, of course, but also because since you asked me about my workflow and how I arrange and everything, I think these are the kinds of things that have shaped all those decisions. Like today, if I pan a guitar to the right, it's not for the same reasons that I used to pan it when I started
Correct.
my career. Back then I was looking for a certain thing and I thought panning was the right thing. Today I know probably it is not the right thing to do. Today I'm panning it for a different reason. Or if I'm putting a percussion element on the right or the left, there is a different reason behind it. So my reasoning and my knowledge has improved. But whatever those decisions are, I think during the process of arranging the song, I think composing and arranging goes hand in hand for me.
Okay.
And all those decisions, come together in a much more I would say fluent way now as compared to a few years ago. But it has the process has still been the same.
Okay.
I really cannot separate the two, because that is because of the work that I do, because how I work is like that.
Okay. And now, say you've arranged a song and you've heard it and you've mixed it the way you wanted to.
Okay.
Correct. Now you're sending it to a mix engineer.
Okay.
Okay. So is there a certain expectation, or do you have a certain sound or the tone in your mind that it has to sound like that? And especially when it comes to vocal, reverbs and delays that, they put as per the feel. So do you, have a say in these things, or do you take charge in these things, or do you just leave it to the engineer and see what happens?
I think it's both, because I definitely have a say in it because it's my song. I'm the music composer. So I do have that. I do have the desire and also the responsibility that it should be the way I have imagined it, or the
Correct.
way I've communicated it to my director or my producer. It has to be like that. But at the same time, I have not worked with multiple mix engineers. It's only been Hriday since the beginning of my
So
career.
until now, it's
Until now,
amazing.
it's only been Hriday.
Amazing.
So all my movies, scores, everything, it has been him. So I think the thing with Hriday is that what I aim to do, or what I try to do better with every film, is that I try to make sure that the mix that I give him as my reference mix is getting better in quality, right? So that it is as clear for him what I'm looking for. I think the reference mixes at the beginning of my career would have been miles away from the final mix that we achieved. But at the same time, my latest film, the song, my reference mix and Hriday's is definitely better, but it is, I would say, 60-70% close to that.
Okay.
So he gets a clear path of where we are going. But at the same time, and I think since you specifically mentioned reverbs and delays, I put the reverb and delay what I'm looking for, just as again an idea for Hriday to understand. Is it a plate reverb? Is it a long hall reverb? Do I really? And sometimes certain plugins which I have now, he might not have that particular plugin.
Correct.
So if it's a very crazy reverb, diffusion, delay, sort of a very there's some beautiful plugins like that,
Yes.
Native Instruments, Raum and stuff like that. So instruments. So if it is something that specific, then just that particular one, I will bounce it out and I'll tell him that, Hriday, I want you to use this. Right? Otherwise, I give everything dry and I just tell him that this is the mood that I'm looking for. And sometimes we have a reference track also. We discuss, like that particular song of Amit Trivedi's or A.R. Rahman's or Hans Zimmer or whoever, whatever suits that mood. So I tell him that, and especially when it comes to, let's say, leveling of certain instruments. I'll give you an example. There was a song of mine called Indun Yedurali. It was released, I think, a few months after Undumute Kathe, around the same time. And that was my first song that ever hit number one on Spotify charts and things like that. So it was a hit song at that time. That song, in the interlude, there was a section where there was a strings arpeggiated pattern. So it went like chirajarajan, 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 and there's a beat pattern in the background. And then there was a flute. So a flute which was basically playing like a solo. All this is programmed. So when I had sent it to Hriday first, he basically put the flute very much in front and the strings in the background. right? Which was exactly opposite to what I wanted.
Okay.
I wanted the strings to be like really in front because it was an emotional kind of a song. It's a very intense moment. So the strings and the beat had to give the energy, and this flute had to sound like far away, like a Lord of the Rings kind of flute, like a very reverby, far
Got it.
away kind of a flute. So he put it because maybe that's what he thought, would probably sound better. But the minute I explained this idea to him, he was like, "Yes, I got it." Because that's not at all what I thought. But now that you've told me, I understood exactly what you want. The next one he sent it was perfect.
Okay.
So that's what I said. I let him go by his instinct, and he would have heard the song. I think before Hriday sits down to mix on any of my tracks, he has heard my reference mixes with track voice and everything. He's heard it like hundreds of times before. Because I'll probably be sending him multiple versions of it to ask him, what do you think? How does this sound? Is this better? I we have that communication between us. But even then, when he's working, I don't like to, tell him pinpoint and say that put this on the left, put that on the right. All those choices, I like to let him. My reference mix has it. He can choose to follow it or not.
Okay.
So I like him to have that kind of a space when he works. And we discuss, I think by the time we finish the song, I think every song has like 11. It's like version 11 because version 10, probably one triangle sound must have been too loud, and I'll ask him to reduce. That will be the only change, but there will be those changes.
Okay.
And the thing about, again, the beauty of working with Hriday is that no matter who he has worked with in the past, how big he is in his career, he has never shown any such thing to me. And I am literally like I was literally a bacha compared to where he was when I started. And even today, nothing has changed. He will make as many corrections as I ask him to, but only if we agree with it. If we agree on it, like we sometimes we discuss about whether the vocal should it be a dB or two higher. Then he'll be like, I don't think that's a good idea. I'll send it to you. You listen to it, but I don't think that'll be a good idea. So he'll send it. I'll be like, yeah, you were right. It sounds better that way. Even even our final masters, he sometimes sends me, depends on the song. If it's let's say, a slightly peppy number, he'll be like, okay, this is the hot version of it. It's mastered a little hotter. This is a little warmer. You choose which sounds better. So, like, even that minute kind of discussions we have, and we go through multiple versions, variations before we finally reach the thing. But yeah, it's with I don't know how it will be if I work with other engineers. So far, I've not done it yet. Last 10 years we've been working together. So touch wood, I hope it keeps going. But that's how my process with Hriday has been. It's always about back and forth has to really be there. But ultimately, I think both of us agree that it has to finally be my vision. If I'm happy with the song, is when he has done his job well and I have done my job well. So that is the thing. Yeah.
Okay. You and Raj Shetty have been associated with many films,
Yes.
right? And one of the films is Garuda Gamana, Vrishabha
Yes,
Vahana.
yeah.
And, I watched that movie and it was, visually intense, and, the music also is so good as the movie demanded, right?
Yeah.
And the songs, especially, I think two of the songs had hymns, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And when you compose the hymns, and you've put a very nice modern touch
Yeah.
to these tracks, keeping in mind the story has a time frame, right?
Yes.
It is I don't know which year it is exactly.
I would say probably maybe 15 to 20 years in the past.
Correct.
Yeah.
Keeping all those, details in mind, and you approaching the song in a very modern way, that thought process, how did that happen, and what was the discussion like with Raj?
I think the one, like, I would say the base concept about the score of ggvv was that I wanted the whole score to have a very stark contrast to what you were seeing on screen. Like, if I showed you those visuals, 99% of people, not music composers, I'm saying just general public, would expect that the music that you would hear would be the local sounds of Mangalore and very rustic stuff. I wanted it to be the exact opposite. I wanted there to be a lot of pianos and orchestral stuff. There are lots of pieces that I've tried to do in that kind of a space there. And then with the songs, we have gone for a little bit of electro. We have gone
Yes.
for, lots of analog synth arps and things like that in the background. I think that was the only thing I had, because I think when I first tried it out with the first song which I did in that was Soju Gada Soju Mallige. So that song, when I tried this whole idea out, it starts off with a Moog
Yes.
ARP, basically.
Yes.
Dun, 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 dun. So when I tried that out and when I just sang the song on top of it, it was sounding good. And that pattern, dun, dun, drgda, chakka, dun, dun, drgda. I was trying to basically create the sound of tase in my in my keyboard, but it had a different tone. And this whole tone of the Moog ARP with those rhythms, it just kind of made it sound very interesting to me. When I sent it to Raj, again, the response from him was also very positive. And I think soon after that, as soon as I gave him that song, the very next day or 2 days later, I sat on Chandrachoda. And Chandrachoda, I tried this even crazier, like a proper dubstep, almost like a dubstep kind of a pattern. But it was not dubstep in the way that dubstep usually has broken beats. This one had this continuous beat because it's a song which will take you into a trance. It's a prayer, right? Chandrachoda, it's almost like a bhajan, kirtan, and all that stuff. So it had to have this meditative quality. So I didn't break the beat. So I just went, dun, 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 dun. I just kept it going. But when both those songs came out in that kind of a way and it seemed to be working for us, is when I kind of decided that this is how the
Music
film should go.
okay.
But yeah, at the same time, I think pretty early on, probably the next song after that was Indo Barida, which I finished the love song in that film. And the Demon in Me song happened during the trailer. It was actually made for the trailer, and then we decided to release it as an independent song. But Demon in Me is probably Demon in Me and Chandrachoda are as electronic as I went with that film. Because after that, when I started working on the score and started seeing the footage that they were sending across, I realized that it had to have this kind of a classical touch to it. Again, the contrast factor is there, but I don't want it to go too electronic. So
electronic, yeah.
if you listen to the rest of the score, there are lots of your taikos and your strings and lots of basses, cellos. That is the vibe that I've got. Lots of pianos, lots and lots of pianos. Because I think for me, piano, and that was solo piano with a long reverb, was kind of the tone that I used to create that feeling of loneliness of the character Shiva. When he's in jail for the first time without Rishabh's character with him, without Hari with him. This character is basically finally, after a long time, after his very disturbing childhood, after a long time, he's been alone for the first time again. And that, I think that piano, and with no other, not even a pad in the background, just the piano's reverb giving that tail, I think that was the best way for me, at least in my mind, to showcase that loneliness that he was in.
Okay.
And there's another sequence in that film, the piece in the OST, it's titled Betrayal. It's basically when he finds out that Shiva finds out that Hari was the one who betrayed him. And he's not willing to accept it. Everybody around him is telling him that this guy has betrayed you, but he's not willing to accept it. So he says that he wants to go to Kadri temple. He sits there on the steps and he's just looking around randomly at people. And then he sees Hari enter.
Yes.
And when he enters, he knows, because of Hari's routine, he knows that this guy has committed the murder the previous day. He has killed somebody who was dear to Shiva. And he knows that he has betrayed him. And at that point, we wanted something orchestral. But what I tried to do was, I didn't want it to sound like the pure kind of tones of beautiful violins and violas and everything. At the same time, I didn't have the budget to get cello players and experiment or anything. So what I started doing was, I started using a lot of granular synthesis, taking cello samples, sending them through a granular synthesizer, basically breaking it up. Because in my mind, it was like the cello that is playing should be broken. This is how I was thinking,
Okay.
And the only way that I could express that was with my computer, with the technology that I had. So I believe there was a granular synthesizer and there was some other plugin, I can't remember the name of it. But and it was also an octaver. So as the cello is playing, there's another lower octave that's being synthesized, which is much gnarlier and dirty kind of a sound. So that piece, that entire piece which is there, it's actually a very emotional piece. But the first few phrases which are played with the cello is actually just one plugin, but it sounds like some 7 cellos are playing, and all of them are out of tune, slightly out of tune, and So basically, what I'm trying to say is that is not the sound that you would expect in a film which is set in Kadri temple in Mangalore to local gangsters. That is
Yes.
not the so that contrast was a big aspect of Garuda Gamana. And yeah, but lots of the good thing about Garuda Gamana was that with Garuda Gamana, with Kahi, I would say even with Rorschach, these are films where I tried experiments because I just liked them, and the scripts gave me the scope to actually try them out. Now, Ondumote Kathe did not have the scope for that kind of experimentation. You know, a film like Abraham Osler does not have the scope for that kind of experimentation, because they are more the story is linear. There is a clear path and in which the story is going, and that is the treatment that the film requires.
Okay.
Now with Garuda Gamna, with films like Rorschach, this is even Kahi for that matter. These were films which were so open to interpretation. You can look at a scene, you might find something in it, I might find something in the villain might not be the villain for you. He might be the worst person in the world for me. It was that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Right? So in that way, there was a lot of scope to play, and I did play, and I liked some of the stuff that I came up with. And I had the support of directors, you know, who actually, even Raj for that matter, was extremely confident to try it. He didn't think about, oh, will it be commercial? Will people like it? That was not there. And because of that, there was a new kind of an experience that was created in that film. I think that honesty
Yes.
of what we were trying to do, we stumbled and fell lots of times along the way. Some of them sounded like absolute dog shit. I just threw it out. But you know, you try something else and okay, this is working.
Yeah.
So, and to have a team that is actually receptive to such ideas. That
Yes, I
was-
think if the team is able to understand the things that you're trying to convey and give you more opportunities, like, okay, that's good, let's try, you want to try again, let's do it again. And I think that confidence is so important as well.
That is very much there, because it's not just like Garuda Gamna, Undumate Kathe. We worked on Rupantara, we worked on Swati Muttila,
Yes.
we worked on Toby.
Yes.
And each of them are like so chalk and cheese different. We have not done a film like Undumate Kathe after that. We have not done a comedy.
Yeah.
Right? We have not done a light film.
Yes.
Swati Muttila is light in the fact that there are no action sequences, but it's such a heavy-hearted film. Like, you would literally have such like I know people who have not watched the film because they just don't want to deal with that subject.
Okay.
Lots of people I know.
Okay.
Well, like, I really cannot watch that film because people who are close to me, so I've told them that, see, this is the story, this is basically what will happen. So be prepared for that, because there's no twist or turns in it. You know, we know what is coming in that film. It's almost an inevitable conclusion, but there's still a beauty in that journey, and there is still a beauty in that story. And so the musical approach for that film, I think Swati Muthila's approach is like something which I've never done in my career before. I think that is probably the only film I can think of where I've not used a kick. The whole score.
Okay.
I think there were two tracks where we finally added a kick just at the very end as we were mixing it, because there was a little bit of a, you know, like almost like a heartbeat kind of a thump that I wanted, very light. Otherwise, the entire score does not have a kick. And I wrote an entire score thinking about sitar as my major instrument.
Okay.
These are things I've never done before or after with that film, because I wanted sitar to be the instrument of the female protagonist and her journey. So the wonderful Shruti Kamath played, I think you might know, Siddharth Kamath's mother.
Of course.
So Shruti ma'am, I mean, unbelievable player, and she enjoyed playing it so much. I enjoyed making the melody so much, and then I even like the enjoyment was so much more when she actually came in and started playing it, because then the melody changed. You know, it just blossomed so much. I would have composed something and I would have probably sung it into a mic, or, you know, probably played it with a sitar, this thing, and she comes in and she brings those pulls and those extra notes and everything. It just becomes magic. So, but at the same time, I know that I was able to get there because I worked with her before. I knew what she was capable of, and I know that what I'm composing for. So I would compose a piece, and I know that, okay, the next extra playing this and then adding that extra 10%, Shruti ma'am will do it.
Yes.
You know, Narayan Sharma played violin on it. Bhutto sir played flute on it. And of course, as always, Hriday was there. And then Madhuri Seshadri has sung in it. Chaitra J. Achar has sung in it. And all those choices were very... and Madhuri Seshadri basically is the one who has been the female protagonist's voice throughout the movie. So there's a song called Mellage which she sang, but all the other humming parts in that score are sung by Madhuri.
Okay.
So that kind of planning and making it an instrument, and towards the very end of the film is the first time that the male protagonist, that is Rajbi Shetty's character, actually gets an instrument. Till then he's never the focus of my score, because that's how I envisage the score. The story is very much focused on the female protagonist and her journey. So I think around 6 pieces have sitar in them, but the very last piece has sitar, violin, and flute. And the reason why I thought of that was sitar is supposed to be her, flute is supposed to be him, and violin is basically kind of like life, like an overall purveyor of fate kind of thing.
Correct.
So that's what I said. That kind of thought process I've not done, not for a Raj B. Shetty film, but for any film before that or after that.
Okay.
The next film that I'm working on, my thought process is completely different. It's determined by the director, determined by the script. So yeah, I mean, it's been great working with Raj and all the other filmmakers that I've done good films with. But it always comes down to that. It always comes down to that filmmaker who is able to like just give you that spark, or that story which gives you that spark and makes. And of course they have to be, as you mentioned, they have to be very receptive to those ideas.
Yes,
To have people like that to work with is a true blessing, actually.
Absolutely. Now coming to the budgets and production costs and stuff like that, how do you manage to convince this is the budget I want
These
to?
are all industry secrets. I cannot tell you. It's just- no, but I see, convincing them is not the question, I think. Because I have not decided that this X amount is my value, right? I have a part to play in a film. So there might, tomorrow, if a film like let's say a script that is as good as Undu Mote Kathe comes to me, there are realities about how I work now, which were not the case when I was doing Undu Mote Kathe, right? So Undu Mote Kathe's budget back then would probably, even if I decided to do it for free from my side, I still have payments that have to be made to my engineer, to the
Musicians and-
studio,
yes.
musicians that I work with. And I probably also want, because I would like to believe that my sound has improved since Undu Mote Kathe, in terms of the instruments that I work on, the plugins that I use, all those things, the people that I'm working with. So all those, I do not want to go back to the sound of Undu Mote Kathe. So to make sure that I'm going forward, even if, let us say, I am taking zero for this particular project, there are certain expenses which I have to account for, which I probably didn't have to account for when I was doing Undu Mote Kathe.
Correct.
Right? So keeping that in mind, yes, there is probably a minimum budget that I would expect, for a project. But at the same time, I'm still okay with working for a project which is, let's say, maybe 60% or 50% of what what I would usually charge. If the production has less money, I know that it's a small team or a new team, but it's an incredible script. I would say one example of that is, again, I'm not saying that it's a small budget or anything, but this Malayalam film, which I told you that I've signed recently,
Yes.
it's one of the, I would say it's one of the most exciting scripts that I've heard. The script narration that I had was so much fun. And at a point, the writer and the director were kind of worried whether I was an actual psychopath, because because the scenes that they were narrating were ultimately gory. Okay, like very violent. Because I don't want to give any spoilers about why it is that violent, but it's very violent. But because of the reasoning behind it, because of how they have set up the story, the bloodshed is justified.
Okay.
Okay, it is absolutely justified. It's like watching a Marvel film or something like that. Normally, if I told you that there's a guy who has thrusters on his feet and he keeps flying, you'll laugh at me. But when Iron Man does it, we are willing to cheer for him. It's the same thing. So that justification was given in this story. I was enjoying it so much. I'm like, laughing when he's saying that, sir, he ripped that fellow's head out. And I'm like, yes! And this guy's like, okay, this fellow is a little weird. He's enjoying it a bit too much. But frankly speaking, that script was one of the most exciting script narrations that I've had in a long time. So once that has happened, the last thing I want is for the budget to be the reason why I don't do that film.
Correct.
Right? So I told them that, see, this is what I'm expecting so that I can do a comfortable score. right? I'll give you my best. I will also make some money. I'll be comfortable financially. I will give you the best music that I'm capable of. That much I assure you.
Correct.
The best musicians, the best collaborations, everything we will have. Then if the production company says that, we are a little tight, okay, there are certain things that I'll probably, decide that, okay, maybe the number of live instruments will come
Can
down a
come
little
down.
bit,
Yeah.
things like that. Maybe our track singers will be lesser. So all those, so that's how I try to. So I think even when it comes to my budgets also, there's a huge, the two aspects I would say are, one is the story and how much I'm excited to do it,
Yeah.
right? And then of course knowing the realities of that production house. Now there is a production house that I'm working with right now which is really big. I'm not saying that just because they're big we have to take a lot of money from
Yeah.
them, but they have budgets which are like 10 times bigger than the film that I'm working on, and they comfortably work on them. They have successful films, so it's not like they're cash strapped, right? So that is a company that I can probably tell them that, yes, I would like this particular artist to come, this veena
Correct.
player or this guitar player, so that is where I can probably push my budget a little bit more so that I can accommodate things like that. But if a film which comes with a smaller budget, I am willing to make those adjustments so that I can, work. So it never comes to me trying to convince them for a certain number. And of course, there are certain tricks of the trade which, when it comes to the negotiation part, which in all honesty, it's not very difficult from how people negotiate at your small shops also. The concept is the
Yeah,
same,
the
the
same.
numbers are different, that's
Yeah.
all. But barring that, I would never try to convince them that I need this amount. This is what you have to give me. I don't like to believe or think of myself as a commodity in that sense,
Got it.
right? I just want to be if I've decided that I want to be a part of this team and this script, then unless they tell me no, I'll somehow figure out a way with budgets and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, Midhun, we'll talk about your MBBS journey, right? So I got to know that there's an amazing musician who's studying in AJ, and when we saw you play the keyboards, and we were like, my God, this guy is amazing. You were playing classical stuff, you're playing amazing chords, and you had the Triton.
Triton.
Yeah,
I
do you
still
still
have
have
it. I
that?
still have it. I
Okay.
still have it.
And I would borrow it, sometimes,
Yes,
and
yes.
take it home and go.
I know.
Okay.
I used to leave it at KK's place.
Yes.
We used to leave it there and
Coming to you had so much to study, right? And having so much, and I think the hours were crazy.
Yeah.
And at one point you had to also see patients and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
How did you manage being so focused in music? Because I remember working on jingles, you were working on a song, and so many other stuff, right? How, and scoring good marks as well.
I think when it comes to marks with MBBS, I just made sure that I never failed. Because that was an agreement that I had with my parents, that if I finished MBBS within the least possible sort of amount of time, which is basically without having any backs and things of that sort, then they would let me do this. In fact, that is the reason why you didn't see me when I was actually studying MBBS, because you met me right after I finished my final year exams and I
Okay.
passed it.
Okay.
I just started internship.
Internship.
So that is
Okay.
when you met me. So I think that was a conscious sacrifice that I did. But there are things in my life where I wish I had gotten the opportunity to start music production and going into it seriously a little earlier in my life, because there are so many music composers and friends of mine, like Justin Varghese. I think you might know him, Malayalam music composer. Such a good friend of mine, such a nice person. And I talk to him and I always feel envious of the fact that he got to work with Bijibal and so many other musicians. And he told me that I think since the age of 18 or 20 or something, he's been in studios. And even people like Sushin or anybody
Yeah.
for that matter, so many young composers have all had that exposure. So I remember having a conversation with him and telling him that sometimes I feel, I feel jealous of you that I didn't get that opportunity, because I've never worked with a big music composer, been their programmer or, their assistant music director for a long period of time. Nothing of that sort has happened. So at the same time, he turns it back on me and he says, maybe that is your biggest strength. The fact that you didn't have that. The fact that whatever you know, whatever your sound is your sound. You have figured it out. Better or worse, good or bad, that's a different story. Which is true. So that time, probably from my 19 years till around 25 4, I think, is
Yeah.
when you met me. So those 5 years, 4.5, 5 years was a time that I decided that, you know what, I'm not going to, other than performing in college
Yeah.
fest and things like that, I would not step out, because if I sat down to work on the Triton, 4 days would go by like that. By then, I would have failed some internal and I would have a back. So I never did that. I never sat down to actually compose or arrange any original music, just performing songs, in college and, the whole thing. But other than that, never got into it. It was almost like, like an addict has to stay away from, some vice because of that fact. Because
Yeah.
it is that strong a pull for me.
Of course.
And as soon as it finished, the very first thing, once I found out that I had cleared my final year exam, the first conversation that I had with my parents was, I need some money to buy home setup. Bought an iMac, Novation keyboard,
Yeah, I remember
and the
that.
sound
Yeah.
card. And that's
Contact,
when, yeah, and
yes.
that's when you guys came and met me. So by that time, I was just basically trying to just immerse myself into it completely. And you entered my life at the same time, and I got an opportunity to experience live also, working with other musicians. Because again, you can imagine in MBBS, it's not like I had a lot of musicians to
Yeah.
work with. Just our hobbyist friends. Mohit was probably the most serious musician,
Yeah.
our mutual friend Mohit. So he was probably the most serious musician that I worked with during that time. So it was, so that entire thing, I think you met me at the right time where I was prepared to, take the plunge. And luckily, probably internship was not so difficult. It was not too stressful. So I did get the time, but yes, it takes a lot. I think the most stressful time in balancing the two for me was when I came to Bangalore and when I started working here as a doctor. I
Correct.
worked here when from 2012, 13-ish. I think probably beginning of 14 is when I stopped right after I had signed Kahi. Because
Okay.
as I was working there itself, I was doing live shows and things like that. So that itself used to be quite stressful. Because sometimes, you never know. Sometimes you might end up having to stay in the hospital for 8, 10, 12
Yeah.
hours, depending on a particular case or something of that sort. And I'm the junior doctor, so I really don't get a say in what my working hours are. So once I started working on Kahi, I still remember there were a couple of days back to back where I ended up working from 6 in the evening after coming back from work till 5 in the morning, took a shower and then went to the hospital. And then again till 6, 5 in
My
the evening.
God.
So
Okay.
I was like, this can't work. This definitely cannot happen. And I was enjoying the other one so much. I was
Yeah.
enjoying music. I was enjoying creating because it was my first time, music by me, and I'm working on a film. I'm going to score for something that was too crazy. So that is when I made the decision to, finally quit once and for all.
Okay.
But yeah, it was I mean, it, MBBS days were good, but I would not change this for anything in the world. I'm just too happy.
Okay, awesome. We have few questions that we'll ask you.
Sure, sure, sure.
And it's like in every episode I say this. It is not a rapid fire.
I'll answer very slowly, don't worry.
All right, so let's go. Favorite music libraries that you've been using?
Favorite music libraries. The usual Native Instruments, Contact, and all that I can mention, but there is one company called, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, called Clevgrand.
Okay.
They are a Swedish company and they make very few instruments, but all the quality of everything is good. Whatever, whether it's an FX plugin, whether it's an instrument plugin, they have a plugin called Shkaka, which
Okay.
is basically all different types of shakers.
Okay.
And so it's not just the tone, they actually play the thing and you can add swing to it, you can change the patterns, but it sounds so real. I think since I got that plugin, all my shakers have been this instrument called Shkaka. So Clefgrand is one company, and I would also say I mentioned this earlier. Native Instruments. There is a effects plugin called Raum.
Okay.
So it's a river plugin. Again, I think it's one of my go-to things nowadays.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. An instrument that you usually use for composing?
Piano.
Piano. Okay. A singer you look forward to work with?
Hariharan.
Okay. Wow. A filmmaker you look forward to work with?
I don't think it'll happen. Mani Ratnam.
Okay. 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 Your favorite movie score?
Oh wow. Ooh, that is a tough one. So this,
Okay.
I would say Lagan. Lagan. I think I'm just going to keep naming Rahman scores only.
You can name
I
Hollywood
think,
as well.
Yeah, this one are Lord of the Rings,
Yes.
The Lion King, and since I saw Mufasa very recently, unbelievable.
Okay.
But again, probably because I was a kid when I watched The Lion King, I think Lion King is still probably higher in level.
Yeah.
Unbelievable score. It's like like yesterday, I remember when I was watching Mufasa, the tune from the first movie score, the minute it came in, the tune brought tears to my eyes. And when you have a score that is that evocative, I think that has to be one of my favorites of all time.
Okay.
So Lord of the Rings, Lion King, then with Rahman, if I start, then we'll have another episode just for that. Only. But yeah, I think I would say Swades and Lagan would probably be right now because I think I watched both of them recently.
Okay.
If I watch another tomorrow, I think that will come to the list. Oh yeah, actually, there's one more film I should include in that, Tenali, because it's a
Okay.
very atypical A.R. Rahman film.
Okay.
Because it's a comedy.
Okay.
It's an out and out comedy film, but I love the score of that film and I love his songs in that film.
Okay.
Have you watched the film?
No, I haven't.
You should watch it.
Okay.
Kamal Hassan, Jairam. It's one of the funniest films I've seen, and his music in it. And it was even I remember when the film came out. I think back in '99 or 2000 or something. I still remember thinking this is such a not A.R. Rahman because Rahman was doing period films and our Rajnikant films like
Yeah,
big movies. But this is an out and out. I mean, it's not a small film, but it's an out and out comedy film. But it's a wonderful score.
Okay.
So yeah, you should watch that.
All right. Okay, so what's next for Midhun?
Next is I'm hoping to move into more industries. Like, Telugu is definitely where I'm headed next. I'm working in Malayalam also. Hoping for some Kannada films also to come my way. I'm discussing scripts, but still haven't zeroed in on anything. But yeah, I mean, this is what my journey is right now, and I can see this going in the same way for the foreseeable future, which is basically trying to make good films, good scores for good films, and expanding my body of work. The fans and the number of streams and things like that. I'm not saying no to it. The more the better, and I'm very happy. But because for me it just means more appreciation for the work that I do.
Yeah.
That just cements that belief in me that yes, I can do this. Because I told you, as I mentioned earlier, there are days where it feels like I'm not cut out for this, or this is not working, or have I lost it? There are all these kinds of things. Like, why am I not able to come up with a tune like when I did that song like 5 years ago? Those kinds of days do happen. But then the very next day there might be a tune which I know that I would not have been able to make 5 years ago. So that brings back that confidence. So for an artist, I think that is always a problem. So having people appreciate your work, having your movies do well is, for me, more than anything, more than the fame, money, or whatever it is, I think the most important thing is the fact that it cements that self-belief in me stronger and stronger. And I want to keep improving. I hope that when I make a film in, let's say, 2030, people should say that, okay, this is much better than what he made in 2025. That should be the journey.
Okay.
In between that, let us see. As I told you, certain things are not in our control.
Yeah.
How well the films do, how many people listen to the music is not in our control. But I'm open to anything. I'm open to any experiences that come.
Awesome. It was great chatting with you, Midhun,
Thank you, man.
after so many years. I mean, we did meet, but this was an intense conversation that was
after a long time, so long.
Yeah.
I know.
So thank you for being part of this show.
My pleasure.
And we hope that you come again here.
Yeah, definitely,
And we'll
definitely.
talk
I
about
would
more
love to
movies
be
and
here.
stuff like that. Yeah. So thank you so much, Midhun.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. And that was the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Hit the like button, subscribe, share, and press the bell icon. We will see you in the next episode. Bye.